Today I'm going to be talking about Heron Therapeutics, which is a biotech company currently sat at $2.04. I'm going to be going through their Q2 earnings report, which although it was short, has a lot to digest. And then after that, I'm going to be talking about the stock price and where I think that might be heading. So Heron Therapeutics released a slide with their earnings report, and we can see here that the revenue is up to 36 million here. That's up $1.3 million, which is a 3.7% increase. And then we can also break those down into the drugs. So we can see here that Savanti came in at 24.9 million. And although that's less than last quarter, that is more than the quarter in the year previous. And the Sostol was up to 4.3, which appears to be an all-time high, or certainly a high in the last 5 quarters. We got a Ponvi here, which doubled, but that's still only down at 1 million there. So although it's a good percentage, it doesn't really affect the top line that much. And then we have Zenrelef here, which is up to 5.8. So not shown here is that gross margin fell from 75% to 69%, and net income had quite a significant fall down to minus 9.2%, and that was from minus 3.2% at the previous quarter, which was a drop of 187%. So quite a significant difference there. Later on in the earnings call, they do blame inventory write-offs and payment write-offs as well, but this only covers about 3.5 million. And there's also the fact that the gross profit fell down, and they have mentioned before that this is due to their product mix sometimes, but that is quite a big difference, and I think that's why if we go to StockTwits here and look at the stock price, we can see the significant drop that was made on the day. I imagine that it was these metrics that actually caused that. However, I would say in defense of this, if we go and check out their release, then we can see here that they've narrowed their guidance. So before they were saying that it was within the range of minus 22 million to 3 million for their EBITDA, and now they're saying it could only go down to minus 10 million to 3 million. So it doesn't look like their long-term hopes for this company have diminished at all within this quarter. One thing I would say though was that in their Investors Day presentation, they really gave the feeling that they had already made some progress into increasing the Zenrelif and the Aponvi sales. And the feeling that I got was that was going to be reflected in this quarter's revenue. And I think that was probably the same with a lot of people. So when that came up, and then on top of that, they had their increased expenses, and we saw that significant effect on the net income. I'm not actually that surprised that we also saw a significant drop in the stock price. So one thing I noticed here was when I wanted to talk about the EBITDA, I went to Seeking Alpha, and I looked at the EBITDA for the last 2 quarters, and it came through at 9.2 and 3.2, which and this matches the net income, and I thought that was a bit suspicious. So I took a look at the 10K, and we can see here that actually I think this number is the EBITDA. It doesn't explicitly say that here, but I think it would be before this other income. It doesn't define what that other income is. And then also here, the same again. But I just wanted to point that out because you can't always actually trust the numbers in these applications. They normally pull this data from another source, so a lot of them are exactly the same. But I have seen discrepancies a few times, so just be on the lookout for that if you do use these applications. So going back to Heron Therapeutics, I just wanted to talk about this. So they've narrowed that down to minus 10 million to 3 million, and if we take a look at that EBITDA here, we can see a 6 million and then a 4 million. So that's effectively 10 million they've already lost in this year. So they have to make sure they don't lose anything more in this year in order to keep them at the lower range of that 10 million. So let's say that next quarter they do minus 5 million, and then the quarter after that they do plus 5 million. That should get them to that lower range of the figure, but that actually is a significant increase in the top line. So you'd have to have 5 million additional in the next quarter, which would be about 8 million in revenue, and then quarter after that you'd have to do 10 million, which would be about 17 million in revenue. That's given a 70% gross margin. So for me, this shows that management has a lot of faith in the steps that they have taken to increase the sales of Zenrelif and Aponvi, and this is just to reach the lower end of their estimate. To get to the upper end of the estimate, the sales could be a lot higher. And if they do manage to achieve these sales, then I think we're going to see a significant increase in the stock price. This is going to show significant growth in this company, and hopefully that will continue for the future. So after the finances, they talked about the PDUFA, which is coming up for their van, their vial access needle, and I've added that in here as a catalyst into Tick-Taco, so we can all see there that that is coming up on the 23rd of September, and that's the final date, so it could come up before then. This isn't really a ballpoint for the company, because once this date has passed, it's not going to exist anymore, but hopefully this is a catalyst that will see an increase in the stock price. It certainly appears that it's going to help with sales in the near future. One thing that I actually noticed with the van in this presentation is how it reduces the time from 3 minutes to 45 seconds, which to me sounds very significant for an operating room. You've got a lot of high paid people in that room, and you want to keep your times down to a minimum. So I do think that this can be a turning point for Zenrelef, certainly in combination with the Crosslink partnership. Talking about the Crosslink partnership, they do talk through this in the earnings report, and they say that it's just taken a bit longer to get everyone trained up, and they are opening purchasing accounts. It does take time for those surgeons to bring these new methods on board. And although this does sound well and good for me, I just think they should have pointed this out in the Investor Day presentation instead of making it sound like they would have had more sales this quarter. So the next thing that they discuss in the earnings report is the No Pain Act, which they joined, which is really good news. So they'll now be able to sell Zenrelif outside of the bundle, and on top of that, they should get some recognition. I guess this was already expected, so it didn't change the overall picture of the company for me. What I really like when they're talking about APONVIE was this graph that they showed. So this is the clinics that they currently have signed up, and they believe that that could be a $30 million opportunity. They also said that this procedure count here, there's actually 75 million surgical operations happening in the year in the US. So this could significantly change this amount. So when they mentioned the 270 million before, I thought that that was just the total addressable market. But I now actually believe that this is what they think that they could achieve with this drug. If they could achieve this drug, then of course their current valuation is well below what it should be. So something that I'd like to point out with the questions and answers is this bit here. So he's saying with the launch of the van, they're really going to be expecting the inflection point to be Q4 moving into Q1, which is a bit disappointing for me. That's a couple of quarters away, so we'd have to see the Q3, the Q4, and then be waiting for the Q1 possibly until we actually see the inflection of the sales data. That's a long time to wait, and I think that's more than what a lot of people have been expecting. So I'm not sure what that's going to do to the stock price in the meantime. Another thing that came up in the questions and answers was this lawsuit for Sivanti, and I'd not actually heard of this before. I hadn't included that in Tick-Taco, so I've added that into Tick-Taco now, and I've added that fairly high up the list as well actually. That would have actually been second in the list, but I've added some other bare points here. So this lawsuit is that this company here, Fresenius Kabi, is trying to launch a generic drug, and Heron believes that this infringes on their patents for Sivanti. Now, in the earnings report, Heron say that they're not worried about this. They think that they've proved a good case that this does infringe on their patent. But this is a big concern in that if they were to lose this lawsuit, they would have a generic against Sivanti, which is at the moment their largest revenue maker. There's another point here which raised concern for me. They were talking about another drug in the market, Axparel, and they're saying that that could potentially become a generic later on down in the line, and this is a competitor for Zenrelef. But again, Heron don't seem too concerned about this. They think it might be quite difficult to create the generic, and they also think with the No Pain Act, it might be difficult to compete on a cost basis, because the No Pain Act effectively makes that argument mute. However, that did spur me to make some more research, and I took a look at the 10K, and that prompted me to add a couple more things as bare points for Heron Therapeutics, because I'd already added here that the oncology franchise is very competitive, but I've added here that the Zenrelef market is competitive, and also the APONVIE market. And you can actually see in the 10K, I've created a link for it here if you wanted to easily take a look. You can see at the bottom I'm not going to look for it now, but at the bottom it lists quite a few competitors for these drugs. But I wanted to create this section to remind me the positives about the Zenrelief USP. So their big USP is the fact that they should last 72 hours. And they also believe within that 72 hours it would provide superior pain reduction. So it definitely seems that Zenrelief has a place in the market, but because it is a competitive market, that does mean it's going to cost more for them to push it out. It also means that they're probably not ever going to be able to get the same amount of market share as they would have done otherwise. And also they can never stay relaxed in this market. And I've added something similar for Aponvi. If we go here, and I think the unique selling point here is that it just simply has better results than the other leading drug in the market, which is called Ordancetron. So that's actually it for the earnings report, and also everything I've added new into Ticker I've just added these three things: the Zenrelief market very competitive, Aponvi market very competitive, and the Simvanti lawsuit. Still, my main concern here is the significant sales improvements still to be proven. I was really hoping we would see more progress on that in this quarter, but let's see what the quarters to come have to give. So taking a look at the stock price, we can see here it's taken an absolute hit recently. It's fallen down from a high of close to $4 there, all the way down to $1.86. And we take a look, that means the company is now valued at around $300 million. So that is a significant change. But to be honest, I'm not overly surprised with that considering the last ER. I did think it was a disappointing ER, and I still think they are yet to prove those sales. On top of that, we do have quite a few risks, as we can see in the ticker here. We do have the oncology franchise, which is already competitive and it brings in most of their money. On top of that, they have the Simvanti lawsuit as a risk to take into that. The other two drugs are in a competitive market. They've got a high debt to asset ratio, so they're going to have to recover that. So there are quite a few things negative about this company, but I do think overall I'm still quite bullish on this stock. They are predicting that by the end of the year they would only have lost as much money as they've already lost, which means that they're expecting to break even on average over the next 2 quarters, which is going to be a big move for this company if they can achieve to do that. And not only would it be great if they break even, but it would also show that they can have significant growth within the company. And with the company currently only valued at 300 million, I'd say they'd only need a net income of 30 million a year to justify that. And I think that's easily achievable if they obtain the growth that they're talking about. And not is it only easily achievable, they could easily beat that. Say they were to get the 270 million they are expecting from Aponvi alone. You could be looking at $100 million profit, and at a 10 PE, that would value this company at $1 billion. If you then throw Zenrelief into that, then you can see that you have a potential multi-bagger here. The only thing that I would say is that there are risks to this company, so you have to be comfortable taking that on to take on this gamble. Okay, so I hope that this analysis has helped. Everything is documented at Ticker, so please feel free to use that, and it's got links to all the proof for all of those arguments. Okay, have a good day.